Welcome to Date with DANU, right here on Hi TV, your luxury channel. Today on the show, we are going to be speaking about why stay back in Sri Lanka. Why invest in this little island home? Why should we say no to what we believe will be a great future outside this country? Today, I'm going to be speaking to 4 young, very vibrant individuals who have stayed back and proven that Sri Lanka is the place. Let's speak more.
Hi, I'm Vikum.
And I'm Emma, and we're here to go on a date with DANU.
I'm going to be talking with DANU about my experience of starting a social enterprise in Sri Lanka, and during these times of economic and political turmoil in the country, why I decided to stay back, and to share those experiences and thoughts with all of you.
And I'll be talking with DANU about my experience coming back to Sri Lanka after being born and raised in the States, and why I've decided to stay here and do the work that I'm doing.
Hi, I am Alagan.
And I'm Randhula.
And we are here to
go on a date with DANU.
I'm here to talk about my journey of building Root Code as a global software company with 120 people from Sri Lanka, and why we believe in Sri Lanka and why we stay in Sri Lanka.
I'm here to speak about what I do with Good Life X and building ventures and supporting people who are locally rooted and globally minded, and talk about the abundance and the opportunity that I hear and I see here in Sri Lanka.
And welcome to the show. So I have 4 youngsters here, if I could put it that way. Young is just in your mindset. I'm going to be speaking to 4 of them about what made them stay back and what they decided that Sri Lanka can give in return. So let's speak about that. But let me introduce everyone who's here. I have Randhula. Say hello.
Hello.
Then I have Vikum.
Hi.
Then I have Emma.
Hello.
And I have Alagan.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for joining me on the show. Can I just have a brief introduction of what you guys do and sort of made this your home?
So I'm founder CEO of Good Life X. That's a company that I started. That's one of the main things that I do. And what we do with Good Life X is we work with entrepreneurs, young and old, small startups or SMEs, who works in nature-based solutions, agriculture, wellness, travel, food kind of sectors, to bring in innovation to these sectors and also to help them scale out of Sri Lanka. That's part of what I do. Everything else, from movies to editing books and a lot of things in art advocacy, I'm part of, but that's my other life.
All right, Vikum?
So I run a social enterprise which is actually founded about 10 years ago, called Kantala. So we work with a group of rural artisans, traditional Sri Lankan artisans. I mean, I'm a huge believer in Sri Lanka's potential of our untapped indigenous knowledge, the traditional value that we have in the country, and kind of taking that to a global contemporary market, which there's a market globally that is demanding, asking for sustainable, ethical, vegan kind of products who conform to that lifestyle. And I think we have a rich history in this country which can deliver and meet that demand. So that's how I started Kantala, co-founded it with a friend of mine. And then just recently during COVID, with another friend, co-founded a small consulting gig to kind of share our learnings and experiences with everyone else.
Great. Emma?
So I also work at Good Life X with Randhula. I lead our communications and our community efforts. So anything that we can do to share our story, grow the people that we work with, grow the amount of people that we work with, and really just connect with more entrepreneurs and like-minded people in Sri Lanka. So I was born and raised in California, and have moved to Sri Lanka a little over 2 years now. So I was really in search of finding purpose-driven work, and I've really found a home here with that.
That's amazing. Doesn't happen that way always. So, and Alagan, tell me.
Yeah, so I founded this company called Root Code 8.5 years before as a college student. First built an app that got popular, somebody bought it. A lot of people asked me, can you build an app for us? Can you build an AI for us? Went ahead and kind of built a consulting firm. So we are over 100 people right now in Sri Lanka, headquartered in Sri Lanka with offices in Estonia, in Europe, and also in the US. So we fully do exports of technology and AI. We work with companies from like startups in the Silicon Valley to banks to massive organizations, governments in the EU to United Nations to kind of everybody and everything into solving technology problems. So here we are.
Amazing. Well, as you can see, it's one fabulous lineup of people. So let's start off with this question. I think you took up something that has been around in Sri Lanka for a long time. And it's quite fascinating to know that we personally will not carry a Sri Lankan key tag or even like buy like a Sri Lankan looking memorabilia. I'm asking you as an individual who may have seen this all over, it's something that's very much available. What made you take this up and think, okay, this is where I will put my time and effort?
I think it really, I got attracted to it because, like I said, I've seen that demand elsewhere in the world. And I've actually seen an appreciation, say in Europe, in North America, for things which are made like handmade, which are made with passion, which have a long history and like a set of principles and values behind those. And obviously, like you said, here in Sri Lanka, we actually lack appreciation for that. The way that the capitalism markets have been moving, we've now started chasing what Europe and North America were doing maybe 20, 30 years ago. And actually, I was once traveling. This was back in 2012 in Egypt, and just came across this nice boutique in Cairo, where there was this very nice leather handbag, which had hieroglyphics very chicly carved into the leather, and it was selling at like some $2,000-3,000 US. And I was stunned. I was like we talk about 2,000 plus years of history. Why can't we translate that into economic value? So with that thought, I just came back to Sri Lanka. And I also knew that it has to be something unique to us. It can't be just another leather bag because, my God, like, we can't compete with Europe when it comes to high quality leather products. Yeah. It needs to be something uniquely ours. So where else then not to look at our rich craft history? I mean, in school, I learned a little bit about the craft industry in Sri Lanka, the fact that we're actually losing it. And it's just not the end product. It's the thought process of the artisans that goes behind it. And one experience that I had was, so this is me, Colombo educated, overseas educated lad from Colombo going up to this rural town village in Kandy, thinking that, oh, I'm going to save this craft. And it ended up that I started learning so much from them, from the artisans, about how they respect the plant, how they respect the community they work with, their concern for the waste that they create. And I was like, my God, like, there's so much that I can actually absorb. And then actually the brand that I run actually became a reflection of those values, those principles the artisans have, rather than what I originally thought it would be. And I'm really happy about that because end of the day, what I want to do is, through the brand that I run, that we run, to tell the world these glimpses of this rich cultural, social, environmental values and principles that we have, and really bring that economic value back to the rural communities. And I think I'm just scraping the surface. Here. And I would say anyone who's interested, who has a passion for craft, for the arts, there's so many more crafts in this country that are just waiting to be taken to the world.
That is true. And also I think we need to embody it as well. And it's quite sad that we don't embody our own craft, and we don't find it cool enough to carry one of our own, like, you know, those you're wearing. Yes. Like one of our own little bags, which really has been like done with you know, palmyra leaves, and you know, it makes it so much more cooler. All right, on those lines, I really need to go into speaking about agriculture. It's such a cool industry. There are a lot of youngsters who are getting into agriculture. We'll come back and speak more about it. Do stick around. This is Take With Us. Welcome back to the show. So, agriculture, people my age, I have seen them getting into agriculture. I don't know whether it's because they buy the land and they try to develop it into some kind of thing that will give them a return, or is it that something that they believe in? I'm not so sure about that. But how is the reach for agriculture today, like in this modern world that we're trying to live in?
I mean, the potential is huge. Potential to do what? Diverse and very many different things. And that's why it's so exciting and adventurous really to talk about it and to be in it. I mean, Sri Lanka has been an agricultural country ever since, I don't know, the independence or we were born or even before. But the fact is what we see and saw and what got us interested to get into solving this problem is that it is very traditional. It's stuck in very traditional old school practices and places that really wasn't tapping into the best potential agriculture holds.
That is true.
So how can we bring in the talented people, the young people who are actually interested to connect to these spots and places and, you know, amplify the goodness the sector has.
It was not made sexy in today's time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you said that, because 5 years ago when we started this DANU, a very well-intended angel investor spoke to me and said, look, why are you wasting your talent and your time in food and agriculture? What's in it? Same person who said that is now investing into agriculture. So things have turned around. It is sexy now because our generation is very conscious about where we put in our energy, where we want to spend our time and what we want to do with our lives. So we see a lot of people, even people who are doing day jobs in software or in engineering or in anything else, wanting to do a side hustle and a side gig in agriculture.
Yeah, and also agriculture means you get land free from the government. Is that still on?
Not particularly free, but there's a lot of things that you can do when in agreement with the government for lease, and also to, if you're doing something like reforestation in a protected area or to protect an area that is also is being threatened, there's a lot of options you can have and play with. But see, when we say agriculture, immediate thing people say is, oh, exports. But also, like Vikum said, for Sri Lanka to export something, we have very, very unique things. But also, let's look at our scale. Can we compete with people who are in our neighborhood areas like Philippines, Indonesia? They've got massive scales. We're talking about like acres and acres of jackfruit, whereas Sri Lanka, we're talking about a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
But what's special about our agriculture output is it's extremely high quality. Just like our diamonds, just like our sapphires, we have very unique value propositions in our ingredients. So what can we do with this very high-end stuff, right? So we have to go after very different markets if you're looking at exports. But alternatively, there's so many other cool things our younger generation is trying to do with agriculture, like agritourism. How do we create experiences together with agriculture where people can come in your small 1 acre land maybe, that you have very different interactive experiences. So we see every day applications coming in for our programs, 200 amount of applications from people who are in our generation who've started very innovative, unorthodox ways of working in agriculture. So it's a very exciting time to be connected to them, because we are constantly seeing what are they ideating and how do they see this world.
Correct.
And I must say that they are mostly locally rooted, so they understand the inherent values, just like Vikum does, on what's dying and what do we need to save or what do we need to cultivate, and how do we plug it into the global consumer and changing trends.
Correct. And also it should be done in a way that the global market sees that this is not the things that they have read about so too many years ago. It's about something that's new, that has been inspired by the old and applied into something new, and that makes it so much more relevant. Now, we all speak about the IT world, and it's a space that I'm just not so connected with. I think it's a different part of the brain that works for it fully. 100%. And Alagan has it. Tell me about when you started this run. Like, was it like, let's put it this way, the geeky thing to do that you were doing?
I was for sure crazy because I was a finally undergraduate student who started a company. I come from no background of money, nothing, right? Barely had like 3,000 rupees in the bank account at the time. But I was an engineer, so I developed things. I started an app with a few people who came up with a crazy idea. Let's build a AI app to understand on which people are singing. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Let's do that, right? The problem is, I mean, now AI is easy to build. In 2014, no, it was hard to build anything in AI. Can I say?
Well, you said it twice now. That's fine.
All right, okay.
Trying to unsay it, you said it.
I mean, yeah. Let me stop with okay, at least. That's the third time. So then I got, run into this entrepreneur world where things are not easy, things don't go the way you want, and 96% of the companies fail in the first few years. But then I kept doing it. I didn't want to kind of pack my bags and go home. And at some point, the app turned out to be somewhat successful. A UK firm acquired it, so everybody had money, and then a lot of people came and asked, can you build something, right? So by now, my only belief in Sri Lanka and the ecosystem is we can build things. But I didn't know to what extent. I mean, we can build. But then when we started, working with Sri Lankan customers and a few others, it came to a point when we tipped off into like Silicon Valley at first. I started realizing we are as equal or even sometimes better than the engineers from the best Silicon Valley companies. That goes back to our education system to some extent, the blessings of the education system on one side. Of course, there are arguments that we produce really good engineers and they can really compete internationally. So the moment I started realizing the potential, that was the aha moment for me. And I'm like, okay, let me just give everything that I have to try and potentially build an empire in tech product engineering. And yeah, here we are. So I think there is a huge respect in the West and in Europe especially to the engineering talent in Sri Lanka compared to any other countries in our region. There are bigger countries around us who produce much more, but the quality and the respect that we have for IT and engineering talent and the things that we produce from here is really high. And that's why I stay in this business.
Superb. Emma, what made you come from civilization to power cuts and everything in between?
To be honest, Danu, it was a long decision in the making. So both my parents from Kurunegala actually, and I spent most of my summers or my winter breaks coming back. And it was a very different experience. It was very, very rural, just sitting with my grandparents and cousins and just kind of literally watching paint dry, passing the time. But there was always an itch inside of me that there was so much more to what was going on in Sri Lanka, and I was very curious about it. And as I got older and we started going on more trips and I started meeting more people, I kind of saw what was inside of me that was searching for those things. And it wasn't until I went to university in California where I met a few students from Sri Lanka who had gone. And there we connected so well. It was so easy. There were so many things that we related on that I never knew. You, as someone that grew up outside of Sri Lanka, you always wonder what life would have been like if you had grown up here.
Yeah.
It's really just one decision that made the difference.
Correct.
And so seeing these kids that same as me, I really wanted to explore those little differences and see who else I could meet. And then right after I finished my degree, COVID had it was 2 months into the beginning of the pandemic. And I was home and I was, kind of doing some research and seeing, I had no idea all that Sri Lanka had to offer. And as soon as I came here in March of 2021, I was immediately exposed to the people, to the nature, to everything that we're surrounded by. And I haven't stopped. That curiosity and the desire to explore hasn't left me.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have gone through the toughest year and still have this. You are one of those. All right, we're getting into a break. And the main question that I asked these guys to come here is why stay back in Sri Lanka? They all had an opportunity. Actually, Emma is from the opportunity to sort of make it go out there and earn in dollars and live a good life. Or we say it could be a good life. But what makes them stay? And what should we think about before we make a call? Let's speak more. Welcome back to the show. It's Date with DANU, and we want to speak about why you need to stay back in Sri Lanka. And if you do take the 80s, we had a lot of things going down in Sri Lanka, and we had so many people leaving our country. So we lost a lot of skill, we lost a lot of talent, and now it's the second phase of it, and we are losing again. And why should we make it a point to stop it? Now let's speak to these ones. You guys had all the opportunity to go out there. One, it could be the education. Number two, you all had the exposure, language, the works. Why did you decide to stay? A collective answer.
I mean, there's so much to do here. And also, you mentioned a good life. When you made an introduction to this question, it's about what a good life means to you. For me, it has to have meaning in the work I do, to the influence that I can create, the impact that I am making by being alive. It's not just drinking the best of the wine and cheeses and you know, having a ball every evening. But it's about being in good company and contributing to something you strongly believe in. And that might mean that you get to play with limited resources, but it's also having a blank canvas. And that excites me a lot as a person, as an individual. And of course, what we are being surrounded with, the nature, the environment, the lushness of Sri Lanka. You can't be blind to that. True, we have a system that is going against us, that we have to, you know, constantly swim upstream. I'm not saying it's all a bed of roses, it's not pretty, it's not fun. But when you choose to do what you choose to do, then it gives you something very different in return.
I think, part of a large part of me wants to stay in the country is because of the people of the country. Because since I started doing Cantla and interacting, working with those rural communities, there's so much of potential, passion, hope that they have, and some of them aren't privileged to have the option of even making the decision of should I stay or should I go. So not to be a savior, and like I said, I've learned so much from them, but I think there's a social contract we have. That's something I believe in. I strongly believe in society we have a social contract, and I've benefited from a position of privilege thanks to my parents, and I think I have a obligation to do my best so that there are parts of our Sri Lankan community who will also have the opportunity to go up in life, like have better socio-economic, cultural, social conditions and benefits. But I think for anyone where it's a decision to stay or leave is not a decision, it's not an easy one. I know people who have the luxuries to live here, who have the financial capability to live here, but sometimes they're disoriented by the lack of justice, the fear that their children are going to grow in a society which where there is no justice that's being served, and I don't judge them. I wish them well, but if you decide to stay, I think there is so much that can be done. And I think.
But how hard was it for you to get something done or get something off the ground?
It was hard. It was very hard.
Is it the system that is in place but that's not active and you have to find other ways?
So it's a very systematic issue. So just let me take a simple example. If you want to start a small business of your own, or either a partnership, you call it single proprietor or a partnership business, Sri Lanka's regulations regarding that is still governed by a 1918 piece of legislation. So it's over 100 years. We have systems in this country which have not been updated for over 100 years. So in that backdrop, sometimes you really can't blame anyone who wants to leave because nothing's really changed. And unfortunately, we haven't seen anyone from the authorities or from that people who have the power to make that change actually taking action. But sometimes, I mean, I know Randhula does, I do, Emma, as part of GLX, definitely Alagan as well. We speak up for this, and I think thank you for giving us this opportunity to come here and talk today, because I think it's important for us to say that. And but yeah, I mean, I stayed because of that passion, and like I've seen my grandfather, my dad do things for society, for community. They're thanked. Like I live off that credit. Like I still live off the credit that my grandfather and so I feel that I have a duty, and if I can do it, I'd rather stay and do it.
I'm going to you, Alagan, for the reason.
Yeah.
Was there a minority position that was involved in your career path as well?
Not really, because I was blessed with really good mentors and friends who always think that they are Sri Lankans, and then yeah, it has been a really great journey because of the people around me. It might be a very isolated story, but I've been really blessed with great people around. Yeah, and the reason I believe in Sri Lanka as a whole is that I see potential, and if you look at it from an investor point of view, there's always a huge advantage if you are an early investor, right? Because a lot of the Western markets are very mature, saturated, but Sri Lanka in 20 years, hopefully we all do our stuff right, we'll get there, right? But imagine being an early influencer and an investor in this market, you could do so much, and that potential I believe and I see, and I really believe that as leaders we all need to shape the direction country grows. I'm doing it in my little ways of building an organization, bringing foreign currency into the country, kind of, giving education to people through our Root Code Foundation. We do some really great stuff, getting our engineers to go to, like, we add up to one school every year, and then you go every other week and you teach the kids, and these kids have never seen computers. We teach them tech education so that they get at least somewhat of the opportunities that we had growing up. So it's the potential that keeps me here.
That's amazing. All right, we have to take a break. When we do come back, we'll speak more about this topic and more. Take care. Welcome back to the show. Something that we were speaking about during the break, actually they are very colorful during the break. I really don't know why. They become all very put together. Something that we were talking about is the fact that, you know, there are reasons why this country is not going where it's supposed to go, and that's the system that is made to be broken. The system is so convenient to be broken, correct? I thought you all would take it from there.
Oh yes. I mean, yes, the system. I think it needs to be broken. I think it needs to be broken.
It's broken.
It's broken.
No,
but no, it's broken. I think it depends for whom the system
That's
works.
right.
That's the thing. For us, for a person who's trying to make a justful, a proper life, like a law-abiding life in this country, forget about riches and everything. Forget about want to become rich, earn like fancy amounts of money, buy a few cars.
Never done anything illegal in your life? Because you referred as law-abiding citizen.
No, absolutely. That's, I kind of take the privilege of being able to say that, because as far as my knowledge goes,
You have never paid a cop?
No, I never have. Because I think if I've always been up against the system, and if I'm going up against the system, I can't be part of that system.
Sure.
I lose credibility to speak up against it if I've been part of it. And I think at every level of society we have to practice it. This is not just a matter of a system that favors the political class and the crony capitalist class. This is not, it's, we see it at a larger scale at that level. But there are at the ground level also, like you said, tipping off the cup. I mean, you're gaming the system. You go into a government office. I know we all don't have free amount of time to spend until a file is moved from one desk to the next, to the next, to the next, like 15 desks. The file has to move in a government office. Yes, we don't have the time for that. But if we start to palm everyone, like oil everyone's palms, where is it going to end?
Yeah.
So I think for a law-abiding citizen, a person who wishes for a just society in this country, the system is broken. But for those in power, for those who are living off it, it's the perfect system for them. It needs breaking. And
what I really like about the people that I get to work with in our generation, including Vikum and the rest of us here and the others, many others who are out there, is that we have figured out ways, very lawful ways, of not depending on this broken system.
Correct.
But how do we create parallels and alternatives to get things done? And with that, I think there's a lot of power in those parallels. Just like Alagan said, he, with his Root Code Foundation, he's going into schools and training those kids. That's beyond the education system.
Correct.
But it's happening. It's going to enable another entire new generation to think for themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm
or at least think beyond the frame that they have been asked to think
That's
in.
right.
And that's the most important thing. Alagan, you work with other countries, and you were telling me an example.
Yeah, so
You are a honorary member.
they call it an envoy. Yeah, it's, so I work with the Estonian government a lot. So we have our Root Code, our European headquarters is in Estonia. And we have been there 4+ years, and the government has been absolutely supportive to us. And they have these programs that encourages foreign entrepreneurs to come in and start the company. It's called e-residency, and I became an e-resident many years back. The system is so flawless and so transparent. It's a pleasure doing business in that country. And now it's a pleasure representing them as well as an envoy. So what I think, learning from that, like for example, taxes you can do in 15 minutes. You can vote online. Last March, the last election, above 50% citizens voted online. Imagine the amount of money you are saving.
Correct.
By not having the election booths and counting and paying people to, do all the things. Other than getting married, everything you can do online. Even that feature, they have brought it up now. They're still debating in the parliament. So it's a matter of sending a request. I mean, things can be online.
You get to see them in person, right?
I hope so. But also, I mean, everything starts with the fundamental that they have an ID, just like now many countries have adopted, that's secure, that has a chip, and a PIN, and nobody else can sign documents other than you, right? So do we not have the skill set to implement that in Sri Lanka? Absolutely no.
Yeah, because if there are engineers building things for other parts of the world, sure, we can build a system here. But can you take a system and express the system saying this is the solution? And would people actually go about and do that and be like, okay, this is a great system, let's implement it immediately?
Something absolutely simple. Why don't we listen to everybody and put a chip on our passport? What's stopping us?
Yeah.
And the moment you have a chip, your passport is traceable, and you would by default get free entry to at least another 15 to 30 countries for sure. Why are we not doing it?
Yeah.
I think we need two things. Number one is we need to build a culture of doing the right thing and being efficient from the bottom to the top. So from the leadership all the way to the citizens' expectations, expectation of doing the right thing has to be there. Number two, we need a stronger civil service. We don't have a stronger civil service. So then what happens is you implement a project, politicians change in 4 years, everything goes back to zero. And then we are stuck in that routine of loop, right? So there is no long-term vision for the country. And that's what I think I'd love to see when the country grows.
Emma, you must be seeing systems that are very different. Like, for example, you had power cuts when you came here. That might have been new for you.
Definitely. But I think my approach to it is I kind of see everything as a challenge. You know, you're kind of throwing the worst at me, okay, like what else? Like what's next? Because my outlook and my approach is there's definitely something that we can make out of it. And I feel like for me during that time, it was optimizing my time. Okay, we got power cuts here, I'm sleeping this time, I'm working this time, and it totally used a different part of my brain. So I feel like that's a fantastic memory of mine to show that this is what this journey's been about. It's just kind of experiencing all the different parts of life in a very different way. There in the States, your life is so comfortable. And of course, it's a testament to all the sacrifices my parents had made to bring me up in a very comfortable space. But that's what people look for when they leave the country, right? Is that comfortability?
But was it it was comfortable for you because you're the second generation.
Right.
Was it comfortable for your parents?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But once they reach that level of comfortability, it's kind of like, okay, is this it? You know, like it seems like it's going to be this amazing, like glamorous thing. And then they reached that and it was like, okay, well, is this it? You know, there was that kind of, you don't enjoy what's at the top. It's really in the process. So now even for them, I find that they're looking back to Sri Lanka. They're both getting involved in projects here, working here, because there's so much that the return is so much higher, because there's so much of purpose involved in it.
Have you all taken any of these suggestions or any suggestion to a government body as somebody who runs a company or a private business?
I mean, have so many times.
Okay.
It's, I mean, countless of times. So much so now. So actually, I'll give an example. Recently, I think earlier this year, it was to do with the craft sector. I'm not going to say who within government.
But this is heavily under the government, right? The craft sector is.
So, so this particular, let's say, group of politicians and political leadership called on persons, stakeholders from the craft sector to come and have an engagement, talk about it. And then they wanted to set up a committee to explore the suggestions that came out during the discussion. And I quite openly said, if you want me in that committee, you're going to have to pay me. Because I've been through this mill so many times, sacrificing our time to see nothing come out of it. So maybe if you have to, rather than using our labor for free and knowledge for free, if you pay us, maybe you'll have a little bit more urgency to make sure that there is a return for what you're paying, because now you're not feeling it. I mean, in these 10 years, I really, since I started Cantler, I really started engaging maybe government authorities, government bodies about 5-6 years on now. I have not seen any meaningful change at all. I've seen people who tried to make change from
But they have
within
also
the
failed
system.
because the system is so big and it's so corrupt.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing. When people who come with the right ideas, the right intentions, a good vision, start to do things, that steps on a lot of toes in the system, and they get pushed aside very quickly. And to Alagan's point, transparency, something that we really lack in Sri Lanka. And this is not just the government, private sector as well. Sure. I've been in corporates, and I've seen how much that lack of transparency is very protected. And I think at all levels we need to get used to it. But back to your question in terms of engaging the government, but now I'm very selective. If it's meaningful, I will. If not, I just don't see the point.
If I may add into it.
Add, please add.
So I am a council member of the National Innovation Agency, which is within a government body, as well as Trace Expert City that's working very closely with the UD, and that's one good example where private sector or a few individuals who got together with the government and converted a rundown set of warehouses into a much more innovative, functioning set of
space.
innovation space. So there has been examples of that happen, but these are one-off things, right? It needs to be there as a consistent, coherent thing. And what I see that gets in the way all the time is the island mentality. And that can happen to anybody, any one of us, regardless of the generation, because we are so used to being in our comfort zone, having things go in our own way, and if that means maintaining a broken system so that we get to be comfortable in it, be it. I don't care about the greater good. That's how, unfortunately, that mentality works. So what we need to really ensure is, even though we decide to stay on, what we need to do is disrupt that mindset within ourselves and within these organizations we go in to work in. So it's not just about how do we modify the tech in this, but how do we get your heads to think in a way that you're not going to be insecure out of a job if you do that, get out of that mentality. So I think that is.
I think the tech, you would agree, Alagan, that tech is a tool that enables.
Correct.
But the fundamentals have to be, like you said, challenge those fundamentals of, like a lot of people say, let's not change the system because it's working for us.
Yeah.
But maybe not for the greater society.
Great. We're going to get into a kind of a game. This show has a lot normally, but we have just sort of kept it aside because I wanted their valuable words to be spoken. It's called Yes or No. Let's get into it. I have questions for you, boys and girls. Here we go. Do you think our individual actions impact the world around us? Do you think we can control our own fate? Yes.
On the fence.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever used your neighbor's Wi-Fi because you can crack their password? I have. Especially when you live next to people who don't have a password. Yeah. But you would have cracked the code.
Once, yeah. But it was so easy. It was something to do with something.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, exactly.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. And then some of them put their girlfriend's name, right?
And you knew the girlfriend name.
Yeah.
I mean,
Invested.
You know your neighbor's
1, 2, 3.
girlfriend's name.
Yeah, when I was a kid. Yeah.
Do you think that it's important to be yourself?
Absolutely.
Good. I just wanted to know. Have you ever been called a creep?
A creep?
For things that you might have done?
No. Many
Never?
different similar names, not creep.
What were the other names?
Hitler, terrorist.
That's just being very... Do you think men and women have equal rights?
Have or should?
Have.
Have now.
Do you think we have a better life now than we had 60 years ago?
We weren't alive 60 years ago.
I'm just asking, so.
You can see that in multiple ways, right?
Yeah.
It depends on how you
Depends on how you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, in terms of equal opportunities. Yes, in terms of
Access to information.
access to information, globalization.
But maybe that information.
But I think we were a little bit more healthier 60 years back.
Yeah,
for
that's the
sure.
thing.
No fast
Relationships were
food.
better.
So it's a
Yeah.
bit like.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to kiss your own sex, would you? No. Yes. Oh, there's another trend.
Women are stunning, of course. How could you not?
Amazing. Well done. Congratulations. We're getting into a break. We'll see you on the other side. So why should somebody stay back in Sri Lanka?
I actually get this question quite often because a lot of people, young people, so I'm 25, so people who have just finished university, maybe they're doing their masters, grew up in Sri Lanka, wanting to find a job after they finish university, and they're looking at the options that they have, and they're thinking, okay, it's fine, it's doable, but I see what you're doing, I see what my other friends in Sri Lanka are doing. It's way more inspiring, it's way more electric. But I'm just unsure. And then I've got friends like me, other diaspora people who, you know, see the opportunities that I've had here and are like, well, I've never envisioned myself to come to Sri Lanka or live or spend time because their view of Sri Lanka is very narrow. And I always tell them, if you want to explore, if you want to build something, this is the place to do it. The people that you will get into business with and partner with and get to know will provide you so much more than just you know, helping you out with something. It's a whole kind of culture of all of it to really take care of you. The people I've met here are friends for life and will take care of me for all of my life. So that is something that I feel like I always tell people, you won't expect that, but it's there, and it's one of the most beautiful things.
That's from an outsider's perspective, I would say. Somebody who has been living here, why would you say?
I mean, you get to be part of such a pivotal moment to create change. Again, I think it's very personal, depends on who you are like a person, but you get to have influence, you get to have a say, and you get to craft that with your own hands, and that's very exciting. And again, you get to meet with people like this who are doing in the run together with you, and that's so energizing. That compared to everything else that is possible, I think is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yes. And that doesn't mean you're going to close up in a cocoon and be away from the world. No, we work constantly with the world. We travel a lot for work to take the stories of Sri Lanka outside, to talk not just about how bad things are, because that's what the news says, but how fantastic the opportunities here and how people are really being resilient and are thriving through this crisis. We get to be the storytellers, and we get to connect people who are connecting through those stories to really see the greater good and be able to have that connected hope. You know, all of us need that hope. It's all gloom and doom if we focus only on that, but where you water, it grows. So that the opportunity to
But does everyone have that privilege of staying back and like knowing that they can water and water and water and hopefully something will grow on it?
It's about where you water also. No, you
That
can't
is
just, you know, close your eyes and water your own feet.
Yeah. Although you have a e-citizenship, you never wanted to take it?
I mean, from an entrepreneur point of view, there is a lot of advantages in building a business in Sri Lanka. Like I said, the engineering talent and being an early mover. I mean, we started doing AI many years back, and now a lot of people call us, okay, the AI pioneers of Sri Lanka. It's fun to be. And that also enables us to make an impact in the way that we know, like bringing money in, kind of building opportunities. Right? So at least at this point, I don't see any reason. I mean, I spend more than half my year outside. That's to bring business. I spend a lot of time talking to potential customers. I mean, we don't have any investors. We don't have anybody. It's just still owned by us. So I have to be out to bring money in.
Have government bodies recognized this and thanked you all, especially at a time when we are in need of dollars?
I haven't heard any thanks to me personally, but I guess the impact is evident what we make. So we don't need people to kind of,
I mean, I would not be so bothered about being recognized by the government and being thanked. Just don't get in the way.
Okay.
That's what I'd say, because sometimes
when they try to thank, it gets...
it can get disastrously messy. I mean, the government has a role to play. The government must play its role, maybe in education, healthcare, things like public infrastructure, but don't try to double your fingers in everything, because sometimes you're not the best suited for it. But I mean, yes, a little bit of gratitude is always welcome, but don't overstep it, please.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys for being here. I really hope that we were able to say something to the ones who are watching in terms of what this country has to offer, and there's so much that we can still do, because there's so many spaces There are so many spaces that are still not touched and being utilized to its fullest potential. Thank you for the work that you do in giving Sri Lanka hope, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You all have been absolutely hilarious to be around. On that note, we need to wrap things. So at least you know they're not joking around. They're doing something honest. We will see you again. Until then, you keep smiling. Thank you for being here. Absolutely a pleasure. You keep smiling. It's a wrap.